Greetings, friend, and welcome to the Between the Covers podcast, where we are working every day to remove the self-limiting beliefs that are preventing us from becoming the heroes of our own stories. I am Marcus Spar. Just a quick reminder, if you are enjoying this podcast, then take the time to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future uploads, and feel free to give this video a like and leave a comment if there's anything that was significant or a key takeaway from this, or even something that you want to push back on. Today, I want to talk about almost a guiding rule in my life, and this comes from the Stuff You Should Know podcast. I think I started listening to them like back in 2017, 2018, something like that, and I was introduced to their podcast by a coworker. And it didn't take me long to get through their entire backlog. And it was just a treat to listen to Josh and Chuck from the Stuff You Should Know podcast just talk about various things that were on their minds or stuff that came up. A lot of different episodes where they're talking about different animals or events in history and scientifically based subjects that a lot of times they would get a lot of pushback from. And one of the things that they developed very early on that just had a big impact for me is the concept of don't yuck someone else's yum. Let's talk about this concept. To a certain degree, it's almost like the golden rule, treat others the way that you want to be treated. And yet, it's a little different in my book. Because while the golden rule gives you permission to treat others any way that you want, the don't yuck someone else's yum is more of a matter of respect in my book. What they typically say is just because they don't like something, just because I don't like something, doesn't mean that I have to get on someone else's case for liking that same thing. A great example of this that's come up several times is the idea of, or I guess not the idea, the taste, we'll say, of pineapple on pizza. This is something that's very divisive for a lot of people. And since I was a young kid, I've always liked a Hawaiian pizza. And back in the day when I streamed on Twitch, something that I'm actually wanting to get back into, there was this one day I was streaming and I just had this complete stranger come into the chat, and while I'm just engaging with this individual while playing the game, the question came up of, do you like pineapple on your pizza? And I was just honest. It's like, yeah, I really do like pineapple on pizza. I am a fan of Hawaiian pizza. And this individual, whether they were serious about it or not, they decided that it was their job to inform me that I was going to hell because I like pineapple on pizza. This is something that could have been a joke. Again, we're talking having a conversation with a complete stranger online, which you always know, especially through text format, that it's really easy to determine whether someone is actually being sarcastic or if they're being serious. Yet this individual said multiple times that there was something wrong with me for being one who enjoys pineapple on pizza, and reiterated, I think at least 3 times, that I was going to go to hell for that. Now, for one thing, I was able to just let that roll off me like water off of a duck. It was this individual's opinion. Everyone is entitled to their own tastes. Everyone has different things that they enjoy. I've had conversations with individuals about natto, which, if you're not familiar with that, it's a part of Japanese cuisine that is fermented soybeans. And I've only had it once. No, I've had it twice in my life. And for some people, it's just the thought of it is kind of disgusting. Why would you want to have these soybeans that have been fermented and there's all these strings attached to them, and it's just like, ugh, they don't want to even conceive of the idea of trying this kind of food. The first time I ever tried it, it was prepared for me by some Japanese friends back when I was in college. And they knew what they were doing with it. And I remember at first being like, oh, that just seems gross. Why would you eat that? And my Japanese friends, Mika, Miyuki, and Takako, had informed me, oh, this is actually really good for your health. Yeah, the taste isn't that great, but that's why we prepare it in special ways. And they paired it, or they combined the natto with some, I think it was spicy pickled like cabbage. Maybe it was even like kimchi or something like that. I honestly don't remember this. It's been over 20 years ago. But the first time I ever tried it, even though I was like, oh, I don't know about this, I actually quite enjoyed it because it was prepared properly from people who know how to make this food. And I know a lot of people who have tried natto are like, oh, this stuff is disgusting. How could anyone eat it? Great. You're entitled to that opinion. You don't like it. But that doesn't mean that you can be judgmental about others for enjoying it. And this is something, especially with our culture today, that seems to move more and more toward tribalism, that we have to focus so much on what makes us different from others and become judgmental about that and even call people out for being different, that we're not focusing on what brings us together. And that's why I am a fan of this ideology, I guess, of don't yuck someone else's yum. It's not my job to tell someone else how to live their life. I want to help people discover what they can do and how they can become better people, how they can overcome some of these hang-ups that they are experiencing, and how they can become the heroes of their own stories. But I'm not telling them this is how you have to live. This is what you need to avoid. This is what you have to do. I offer suggestions for them to consider. A lot of times, it's, you're having a lot of these negative thoughts that are just playing in your head. What if we were to start to actually realize what we're saying to ourselves and how that is impacting our lives? What would life look like if you didn't have those messages that are causing you to doubt yourself, causing yourself to feel shame, causing yourself to even deny yourself some of the very important aspects of our existence? I don't tell anyone that they can't like something. That's not for me to say. And yet, if we take a look at the social dynamics that we're seeing today, not just in the US, but kind of all over the place, one of the things that is very prominent is certain groups of people have the correct answers on how to live your life. And if you are not living your life according to these beliefs, these dogmas, then there is something wrong with you. And that's something that needs to be fixed. That's something that needs to be purged. That's something that needs to be, God, I don't know. The only word that's coming to my mind right now is redeemed from my Christian upbringing, and I don't like using that. But it's the only word that's coming up. It makes me think, what would our lives look like if we just allowed people to be who they are? Now, I do want to premise this with, this isn't to say that there are certain behaviors or mindsets that we should just allow to run rampant. Like, a great example is individuals who enjoy child pornography, sex trafficking, things of that nature. Those are not good because they're causing harm to others. But being someone who enjoys pineapple on pizza, that's not causing harm. That's just a taste preference. If you are someone who believes in a monogamous relationship and you encounter someone who has an open relationship, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad or it's evil. These people, in fact, I've heard from some individuals who actually do have open relationships, that one of the things that they navigate is, how do we do this properly and make sure that everyone has buy-in on it? It makes me think of so many fallouts that we have seen with either prominent, we'll say, religious leaders or individuals who are influencers online or celebrities, where they engage in some kind of illicit behavior with others. And one of the things that often comes up is, it was a consensual relationship with grown adults. And if these individuals are married or they're in a committed relationship, one of the things you don't see is how it was consensual between two individuals and not all of the individuals. I'm not going to specifically name anyone in this example, but I have seen over and over again how someone decides to engage in an extramarital affair, and the reasoning for why it was okay is because this person and their affair partner consented to it, but their committed partner or their marriage partner did not. They didn't even know about it. That's not consensual. That's an example. And I have seen so much how, especially individuals who are more conservative, tend to be the most judgmental about the way that others live. There are so many people who are focused on the moral fibers of our society that they are ostracizing individuals who think or live different ways than they do, or they believe different things that they do. And that's yucking someone else's yum. A great example is, I was having a conversation with one of my friends who is gay, and I was just curious. I was really curious because I used to be a part of this online community that the focus has been to help Christian men outgrow unwanted porn use. And I don't know, it's interesting. I've never been able to figure out exactly what's going on here. What I have noticed is within this community anyways, either it is a safe enough community for individuals who struggle with unwanted same-sex attraction to join and to be able to share their experiences, or there's just a much larger percentage of individuals, especially within the Christian communities, who struggle with this unwanted same-sex attraction. So I have had many, many conversations with people where they have shared with me struggles about having these unwanted thoughts about spending more intimate time with other men and finding other men attractive. And so while I was just sitting down and sharing a coffee with this friend of mine, I asked, I was legitimately curious, and I just asked, there are so many people I have seen that see this attraction towards other men as being wrong, as being awful, as being just unwanted. How was it that you knew that you were homosexual instead of, say, someone who just struggled with a same-sex attraction? And I remember my friend, he just looked at me and he's like, well, for me, from a very young age, it wasn't unwanted. And I was like, oh, well, that's a very concise way to answer that question. And yet, there are so many people that are more concerned about what goes on in other people's bedrooms, and they're wanting to be critical, judgmental. They want to condemn these individuals because they are afraid of the morality of the coming generations, or even of communities and of society. And yet, one of the things that I can honestly say, these gay friends that I have been some of the most loving people and most accepting people that I have ever interacted with. I'm not homosexual. I am perfectly content to live my monogamous, cisgendered, heterosexual marriage with my partner Libby. And yet, I also see these gay people who share affection with each other, and the love is so real. And I used to be someone who felt that was wrong and that needed to be taken away. I'm honestly grateful that that's not who I am anymore, because I was yucking someone else's yum. Who am I to say that these wonderful and beautiful relationships that I see with my homosexual friends, why would I say that that's wrong when there's genuine affection and there's love and there's open communication? They're not judgmental about what my partner and I do. They're not judgmental about what heterosexual people are doing. They're not concerned about what's going on behind their closed doors. And again, I want to specify that when we're talking about this concept of really just letting people live their own lives, since I left the church and have been agnostic, I have heard many, many conversations about, well, where do you get your morality from? If it doesn't come from the Bible, where do you get your morality from? My morality comes from a genuine respect and honor for human life. It's one of those things where so long as you're not hurting anyone, who am I to judge? Who am I to say that the way that you're living is wrong? I have had so many people tell me that the way that I'm living is wrong. Some examples. Again, I'm going to be referring to my Christian upbringing. That is the best example that I have here. I felt so much guilt and shame for decades because my partner Libby, when we got together, has consistently been the breadwinner in this household. I felt so much shame because I was always taught from the pulpit of Christian churches, from well-intentioned and well-meaning individuals and leaders, that because the Bible says that the woman is the one who is supposed to take care of the house and raise the children, and the man is the one who is supposed to go work, that if your life and your marriage does not look exactly like that, then there is something wrong. This is something that I still struggle with from time to time because it was so deeply ingrained inside of me. And yet, I'm the one who takes care of Odin. You can see him sleeping on the love seat behind me. He's my child, really. And Libby is the one who has consistent hours, makes the most money, and I'm the one who handles a lot of the chores around here. I'm the one who runs errands. That is backwards compared to how I was raised. And if that's not how my life is supposed to be, why is that? Because someone else told me that's how my life is supposed to be? Because someone who is an expert in a religious text from the Bronze Age says this is how my life is supposed to be? And if that's not how it looks, then I'm failing as a man, I'm failing as a partner. It's no wonder I've struggled with my masculinity for years. And it's not because I'm doing something wrong. It's because I have a different embodiment of what it is to be a man. I'm not an alpha male by any means. I don't want to be. I've seen what alpha males do. I've seen what men who are so focused on strength and power and authority have done to others, and the harm that has been done to generations of people. That's not who I am. I'm compassionate. I cry. I'm empathetic. I'm emotional. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not going to say that someone is acting terrible for being, say, an alpha man or an alpha male. And for me, if they are honoring life and they're not causing harm to others, we're not just talking physical harm, we're also talking emotional and mental harm, then who am I to judge? Who am I to say that they're living their life wrong and they're doing something wrong? That's why for me, a guiding principle in my life is to not yuck someone else's yum. I honestly don't want that responsibility. I don't want to be the authority in someone else's life. I'm learning how to be the authority in my own life. And that's me becoming the hero of my story. if this is something that has been a dynamic in your life, then I want to honestly ask a question. And this is not judgmental. This is curious. Who taught you that? And what was the purpose of it? Was it a purpose of getting you to have an us versus them mentality? Was it reinforcing, say, unhealthy patriarchy? Was it reinforcing this dynamic of tribalism, that you have all of the right answers and people who don't believe or think the same way that you do are wrong, maybe even evil, that they're an enemy, that they're antagonistic? These are questions I've wrestled with ever since I left the Christian church. This is something that I have wrestled with. These are questions I have wrestled with. And for Libby and I, we have honestly found more love. We have found more enjoyment in life. We have found more acceptance for living out values that respect and honor people's individual choices to live their own lives how they see fit. And that's, again, not to say that things like abusing others or taking advantage of others is a good thing. That doesn't mean that exploiting people who do not have the ability to consent or have the power to stand up for themselves is okay. No, that's causing harm to others. But there are so many good, well-meaning people that are just trying to live lives on their own terms and not have others dictate what that looks like. That's how I live my life. I don't want others to dictate what my life needs to look like. And therefore, I'm not going to yuck someone else's yum. I am going to allow people to live in honor and respect of their individuality and their ability to make their own choices. To me, that's what it means to not yuck someone else's yum. And I hope that's something that has been inspiring for you. And until next time, live strong for today.